you I would assume that you don't believe there's much to it, or am I wrong and you do think there's something to it?
I don't think there's much to it. And in fact, again, I mean, everything is becoming more secure that way. I mean, think about the transition to mail-in ballots again. One of the issues, like, so I work the polls every year in
Ooh,
my
you're one of
district.
them.
Well, no, because I'm a
Mhm.
Democratic committee person. So I'm there to, yeah, I'm not there. I mean, because the poll workers have to be nonpartisan, right? I'm
Yeah.
there to, basically shake hands with people as they come through the door, give them a last, like, rah, rah, go Democrats. And then at the end of the night, I observe the count. And there's always a Republican person there as well. And we always get along, by the way, because you become brothers in arms when you've been there
Mm.
for 12 hours
Yeah.
all day, or 13 actually. By the end, it's you're shooting the crap with them, and you go in, you observe the count. But in Pennsylvania and a lot of states, when you move to mail-in ballots, see, before this year, there were electronic voting machines where you went in, you pushed a button, and you walked out, and at the end of the night, the machine produced a receipt. But the only way the vote was recorded was by the pushing of that button, which was an electronic, kind of like a calculator or something, plus one for Biden, plus one for Trump, and it was all done inside the microprocessors and of the basically computerized machine. With the mail-in ballots, those all have a paper trail. You can hand count ballots that were, and even now they switched it. So inside the polling place, people were filling out slips of paper, which is more secure because at the end of the night, if someone says, well, machine spit out this number, you better have that number of ballots to match what the machine says,
So
right?
here's a
Like
question
by
for you,
paper
because
machine.
this is something in Georgia, for example. One of the things that made it difficult for any narrative, in my view, before I watch this video, I won't give my opinion on what I thought after. It may have changed my mind, but
Mm-hmm.
when they audited the votes in Georgia, and when you look at those Dominion machines, it prints off a copy of what you voted for. So you confirm, yep, that's what I want to do. It gives you a print off. You take that to the poll worker, but the Dominion machine counts the vote. And you then have a paper record you can audit and cross reference. Was that not the case in Pennsylvania?
That's what I mean. You do. You have a paper record. Exactly. You blacken. It's like for those of you who took like standardized tests in school, where you blacken a circle next to the name. That's exactly what I mean, the first election Pennsylvania was using them. But you had a paper ballot. You got a receipt. Well, not a receipt, but
It
like
was
there was
confirmation of
some.
your vote.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
was confirmation that you voted. And the paper ballot was kept by the machine so that the machine did count them electronically and spit out numbers. But if someone said, I don't believe those numbers, first of all, you have people coming in. Every person who comes in to vote has to sign in. So yeah, you have a count being kept, how many people came to the polling place. They're each given one ballot. So the count at the table has to match the count of the ballots that the machine, when you add it all up. Like you can't have people cannot vote for different offices. So you could come in and vote for president, but not for governor or whatever. Um, but you can't. What you can't have is the machine have any one office have a number higher than the number of people who
Mhm.
actually voted, right? And then so you have that check. Then you have the papers. If something goes wrong, you can go through and hand count papers.
Mhm.
And really, there's really no way. So then you say, well, okay, couldn't I come in? Like if I know that Joe Blow down the street isn't voting, couldn't I come in and sign his name and pretend to be Joe Blow? Because after all, Pennsylvania, there's no ID check. Well, I mean, theoretically, you could do that, but you have a couple of obstacles. First, you'd have to know for a fact Joe Blow's not voting, because if you come in and try it and get caught, you will be arrested.
Mhm.
Two, um, um, you'd have to know that they didn't mail in their ballot. Again, I mean, that's like the same thing. Um,
Yeah.
and three, with 65, I mean, this is going to go to your point. I mean, the turnout in these types of elections, especially, makes it such that it's easier, as you said, to do it in a local election because so many fewer people vote.
Yeah.
If you just wanted to random guess based on voting patterns, okay, we know that this person only votes in presidential years, so we're going to try this in one of the non-presidential years. You'd have a reasonable shot at guessing correctly. But in
Mm.
presidential years, things are off the charts. People show up to vote, And if you vote twice under any name, I mean, you're going like there's going to be a problem, and you'd have to find individuals to come and do that. It's not a practical thing to do in any grave numbers. I will say though that the governor of Texas, because the one thing is, of course, in the United States, each state has its own voting rules, voting machines. Even they go down by county. So this county will have these voting machines, that county will have those voting machines within the same state. So there are, it's a decentralized process. It sounds like, oh, well, that means there could be fraud, but actually it prevents fraud on a mass scale because your methodology for defrauding in, Cobb County, Texas is different from your methodology for doing fraud in Buck County, Pennsylvania. What works there wouldn't work here. You'd have to have this incredibly coordinated effort. It's not practical. And I will say, as I started to say, the reason I brought up Texas is that was it the governor of Texas, or the LG, the Attorney General, I guess, of Texas sued Pennsylvania, or attempted to sue Pennsylvania for voting procedures, which Texas does not have standing to do, and was thrown out immediately. But he offered, I think it was $3 million for evidence in Pennsylvania of voting fraud. Well, our lieutenant governor, it was their lieutenant governor who made this challenge in Texas. Our lieutenant governor, John Fetterman, has, because we did find, I think, in a single instance of voting fraud in Pennsylvania was someone trying to vote for Trump who was not on the rolls. So it was actually a voting fraud attempt for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, okay, the lawsuit was, well, we did prove that there was voting fraud. So where's our $3 million?
Yeah. We've caught the guy. Yeah, one less for Trump.
So there you go.
So on this, so what I want to do is I want to look at some of the evidence because I'm very much on board with you, and I might, if I'm smart enough, put a link up here when we replay this. I did a video where I examined, and I spent a long time investigating mail-in ballots because I got into a lot of debates with people when I actually was doing that. I've stopped debating politics with people on Facebook because it's a zero-sum game at the end of the day.
Correct.
But when I look at mail-in ballots, I am of the belief that is the most, and this is somebody who works with tech, works for a tech company, and believes, and I don't even write on pen and paper anymore. So I am not somebody who is a technophobe by any stretch. However, the mail-in ballot, for the same reason you highlighted about, the differentiating process is making it hard to, make a wide-scale campaign to defraud the voting system. Having those mail-in ballot processes in place, it makes it impossible in my view, because every polling station is a house now. Every ballot has a name and a QR code on it or some sort of an identifier to that individual. And to be able to coordinate at, let's say everybody's voting by mail. So there's going to be 150 million registered voters, or 170 million or something like that. How are you going to coordinate what people are going to do at every individual location where a ballot is sent, how they're going to send it in? Are they going to bring it in by hand, or are they going to post it in? But this gentleman here, so this was the first video. And Michael, thank you if you are watching this, thank you for putting it in. I'm going to go over it. I'm not going to be a dick if I don't agree with it, but if there are things in here, and there are things that I found problematic in this video, and I want to share with you, Andrew, as well. I found it fascinating, and this character that we're going to be looking at, I found extremely fascinating. So this gentleman is an expert who this channel has brought in, that he can prove whether a ballot is fake or not in seconds. So I'm going to play this now, and hopefully you can hear it.
Your background. I mean, it's so impressive with all the patents and everything that you've received.
I'm going to let it play.
Of your background in technology and also in making things simple.
Now, don't get thrown when I say this, because when you look at me, I'm a nerd. I'm hiding out in a biker's body, so don't get thrown by that, because I don't look like your typical nerd. But I'm actually one of the most granted patent authors, not only in the United States, but in the world. And most people know me for what's called Scan Connect, Scan Commerce, or Scan the Tech platforms. And that's where, when you use your mobile phone, you actually scan a barcode or you scan a Q code, and it loads up on your phone. Or now you track any product by it, or you see it on any grocery store shelf. I'm the fellow that created that platform, originally called CRQ, C, our cube, and shortened to Q code. And now it's on about 12 billion devices around the globe can do it. And so when I started looking at these ballots and everybody talking about, well, codes can't be hacked and these things are so hard to detect, I realized that everybody was speaking geek. And so here's a good example. When you now go to an airport and you don't use a boarding pass and the code's on your phone and you do it, that's me. That was a very simple explanation. When you now go through toll tags and you no longer have to roll down your window and chunk the change and don't hit the brick wall, but it now records the transaction and dings your card or your shopping cart, that's me. Old days when we had computers and we finally looked at the phone and it would look wonky, but now it adjusts, that's me. So I have a deep history in making this stuff work, but also explaining it. And it's a real simple fact to prove that there was massive fraud in this election.
Okay,
so
I'm going to stop
what
it
we're talking
there.
about is
Actually, let me stop it there. So what were your thoughts on that opening? What he was saying, why he was saying it? Just, I'm curious because I haven't really gotten your take as such. I just explained to you yesterday that I was going to be sharing this. So what are your initial thoughts on this as an opener?
Well, I mean, my first thoughts are he claims to have invented a variety of technologies that are, first of all, I mean, like the resizing of the screen, the QR code, the passing through like an easy pass. These are, he doesn't even seem to understand that, for example, going through the easy pass lane is not the same thing as using your phone to scan QR code. He conflates the two of them. I don't know if it's he doesn't understand or he's just trying to make claims that are
Yeah, he's got his hand in a lot of technological.
right. And then the screen
historically.
resizing has nothing to do with either one of those things. So he's either the most prolific computer genius of our times, which is a little surprising, therefore, because I can certainly name Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, Tim Cook, even
Elon.
Elon. Well, he's Tesla, but what's the?
I'd say he's a tech giant.
What's the name of the other guy? Steve Jobs, Steve Wachowski, right? Is the
Yeah,
Apple,
the great was.
The great Wachowski, right? Was Drewski? I can't remember. I'm blanking on the
Wozniacki.
but I Wachowski, right? I also am a big fan, as you know, of computer history, actually. So I can go back and really name, the pioneers of the early days of computing. I just was watching something about Google and a documentary on Google and the beginnings of Google. And I've never heard of this guy. And he's, you know what I mean? He's somebody who he claims to have his hand in some of the biggest technologies ever.
Yeah. So can I jump in because Michael, I'm going to speak to you. Hopefully you're watching. And I want to do this respectfully as well, because right away I've got a massive problem with this. And Andrew, I think you spotted the same things I did, except I have the benefit of having done my homework. Because for the same reason that my view on Todd Standing made it difficult for me to believe whatever he said after the first scene. This is kind of where I'm at with this first video presentation that was given to me as proof that there's fraud in the election, because he's now representing things that I can very quickly in about 10 minutes look up and find are fraudulent. So the first thing that made me kind of, who is this guy? His surname is Pulitzer. And I thought, oh, he's an inventor with the name Pulitzer. That's quite cool. You don't see that too often.
No.
And I did some research and I came across this article when I looked, this was the first thing that came up. And you'll appreciate this. Javon Hutton, the chairman, chief executive of Digital Convergence Corp. What do you do once you've built companies such as Belo Corp, Radio Shack, Young and Rubicam, and Coca-Cola of investments between 10 million and 37.5 million for a product that flops? You change your name. Phil, the masterful pinchman between the QCat, acutely named handheld bar code scanner that was supposed to bridge print media and the web, apparently now does business under the name J. Hutton Pulitzer, or the one-word moniker Javon. Operating J. Hutton Pulitzer & Co. out of Dallas, the inventor of what has been decried as one of the most ridiculous products of the internet era now specializes in the development of unique intellectual property such as bottled rainwater crystals and the forthcoming book entitled Generational Curses. Will Javon be foiled again? Now, I did check this because...
Hold on a second, because I got to say something here. Did you notice in the video, because he changed, I didn't notice this yesterday, but if you could play just a just as he started his introduction.
Yeah.
Play it one more time, just for a second.
I'm going back. I think we're, oh no, it's a little bit further back. Okay, there we go.
Tell us a little of your background in technology and also in making things simple.
Now, don't get thrown when I say this, because when you look at me, I'm a nerd. I'm hiding out in a biker's body, so don't get thrown by that, because I don't look like your typical nerd. But I'm actually one of the most granted patent authors, not only in the United States, but in the world.
Is that what you wanted, or what are we looking for?
No, you could talk about that. Keep going for just a second.
Okay, before we go on, can I comment on that?
Yeah, please
we're there.
do.
So I looked up patent. So I had to do some research, and I looked up who was the most prolific patent author in this year historically. His name wasn't on the list. Now, the thing that's lovely about patents is you can look up who's got patents. This is open source information. This isn't, you have to, because if I want to patent something, I need to check that I'm not stealing somebody's idea. And he had, to be fair to him, he would have made quite a bit of money. And I have a lot of respect for what he's doing. He's got skin in the game. He is grafting. He's got about 106 or 177 patents that I found currently active. And they are in technology specific to do with barcodes and scanning, but there's nothing to do with Q codes. Now, QR codes, which he's referring to, which is me. QR codes actually were, I Googled that. They were invented, patented by a company called Denso Wave. It's a Japanese company. It was patented 25 years ago, so well before even the QCAT came out. So he's not responsible for QR codes. And he's also, and I'm sure 106 is a lot of patents to be authoring, but the people who are leading the way, the individual authors for just 2020 alone had patented about 4,000 to 5,000 things per person. So he's a little way off of that. So right away, I've got some, that's another credibility issue, but I'll play it and you let me know when to stop.
Hold on 1 second before you, because I do have something to say about that. I don't know what you know about United States patent law, but it's awful. And, having 170 patents, not only is it, compared to the most prolific patenters, that's just an outright lie. But I would probably wager that the most prolific patenters are themselves problematic, because basically you can imagine it, you can patent it. The fact that you've patented, like, let's say I could think of like a flying glass that I would drink. If I can make a drawing of a glass that would fly with rockets coming out of the bottom and little wings, then I can patent it. It has nothing to do with whether or not you could actually build such a product.
I couldn't find anything to say, because I did look that up. I did say, okay, so do I need a proof of a functional
No, you don't.
concept?
Yeah.
No. You need proof that it is a concept that you can represent and that you can prove that's not somebody else's idea, but you don't have to prove that it's a working design.
Yeah, or that it's actually possible. You just have to be able to draw it and imagine it. Furthermore, because of this, you can get patents on all kinds of stuff that there's also copyright stuff that you can manipulate. So you see a lot of brands that in the US that go out of business, but then still are around, and they exist solely as shell companies so that people can go around and basically sue people for trying, because what happens is a defunct brand with a recognizable word mark gets picked up by, off-brand manufacturers in China and places like that. But somebody else will pick up the intellectual property. They don't make anything. They just, their production is that they sue people who use defunct. There's a lot of bad stuff in the law around this kind of thing.
So he's not really represented himself as anybody who's an authority with his most prolific patent author in the world. He said worldwide, to make the claim such as he's not a stupid individual. I don't believe he's stupid, but I don't know why he thinks he can say, and that's why I'm wondering. Maybe I misunderstood it. Maybe I'm not being fair to say QR codes. You scan something on the device, 12 billion using it. That's me. And then the thing that you mentioned was like Easy Pass. He references the toll booths, and I Googled that just to make sure. I thought, well, maybe it is like barcodes, because he used barcodes, which barcodes were invented in 1983. That's when I found the patent for a barcode. 83. It was way long ago. But they actually use transponders, so they're not even using they're using more, not GPS, but they're using sensor technology that I looked through I must have looked at, and to be fair, maybe he's got a patent that I couldn't find. But I read through all of his patents, like the headlines. Most of them were sensors in the medical field. Couldn't find anything related to that. But just to the fact that it's not even related to what he's talking about, transponders. It's not.
Remember,
even
too, with patent law, you can make a very tiny variation to an existing patent, and you can patent that. And say, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, and so again, there are patent mongers, people who just, because then they'll use their patent to try to sue people with vaguely similar technologies, which is again part of the history of computing when you look into it. Like how many companies were, basically patenting things they had no working concept for, no working prototype of, they had no proof of concept. They could either take a patent that already existed and tweak it slightly because they could imagine it, and then try to sue people for using their patent. But if you could go back and play what I was looking for, because I didn't even notice this yesterday when you introduced me to this video, in his little introduction, after he talks about
The right
the
thing.
bubble
Sorry.
buddy.
Yeah.
Go ahead, play it.
Nerd, but I'm actually one of the most granted patent authors, not only in the United States, but in the world.
What a legend.
And most people know me for what's called Scan Connect.
Stop right there.
And,
No, most people know. You changed your name, pal.
So that is a massive problem. Mr. Filial, who's now Mr. Pulitzer, is what he's known for is no longer connected to his name. So his QCAT. And the thing is, I don't think he should be. In a way, I have a lot of respect for him selling the idea of, and the whole problem with his invention. This is a fascinating character. The whole problem with his invention was you have something attached to an old like IBM, white IBM, green screen, big heavy computer that scans products so you can buy them. It's problematic because it's not something like people don't. There was never any need for that. And we actually have a comment here I'll get to in a second. So you can. Hey, Veg, how we doing? We have one of our regulars on. I'll fill you in a second, Andrew. But where was I going with this? See, I'm terrible with comments. Veg knows this. So anyway, yeah. So there was
the old bulky computer, so you can buy things.
And what Veg said, and actually it's similar to what you're saying, they can sue people for using their patent, but they can also just simply sell it, right? So you might be able to better answer this. I think they can sell a product that's got a patent on it. So I can sell a product that's like a water bottle that uses the same technology as a Nalgene water bottle. But where does the patent come into play? I can't take that design and claim it as my own because I can sell something that's very similar to that patent.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that.
Well, I mean, if you have a patent on it, you can sell it. But I mean, I heard that you're talking about the commenter selling patents. That's another little scam game that you can play. Like, because if you can beat somebody to imagining something, then they want to but you don't actually have the product. But now there's somebody with a patent that's similar enough that you're like, oh Christ, if I do this, then they're going to sue me. Mm. So you can basically hold their actual working item hostage with a patent, that you cooked up out of your imagination that has no ties to any real product. It's basically a way of, gaining leverage to get a settlement before a lawsuit. Yeah. But this is
why Apple releases their patents. You can tell what Apple are going to do because they patent products before they even start to design them. Because there's a lot of employees and they don't want, squirrels to get out.
Right.
So
well,
what do
also want to blow away the competition before, so that somebody's not ahead of them. But go ahead.
Why don't we jump ahead here to Javon? Because I did listen to this. So when these comments came across, I wanted to give it the time of day. So let's just assume, because where he's going to with this is he has technology, and that I believe. He's got his team have put together a device that can scan the document. He's going to talk about next, and I'm not going to go into it. He talks about it about this point, and I didn't know this was a thing. That he can tell if there is folds, and his theory was that, and I didn't know this was at all something that was an issue. If there's no folds, therefore it's not a legit mail-in ballot, because he makes the statement that mail-in ballots are the problematic ones. So therefore, if there's no artifact in the scan to show a fold, it couldn't have been posted. So therefore, it was just inserted as a flat piece of paper. Now, I Googled, and I only have Google to work with, which is the bias media, fine. but I haven't been able to find any information or any even.
You got to use
Uh,
DuckDuckGo, Sean.
I should have used the
Yeah.
non-Google search because yeah, it's biasing my results. But I couldn't find any accusations in any article that people were receiving non-folded ballots. Even the way they store them is folded. So I really didn't pay much attention to this.
That's
But he goes on.
ridiculous on his face, because the fold would have to go across the Q code, which, if it's properly designed, wouldn't do, because that would interfere with scanning the Q. That could
But
potentially
he's
interfere
saying
with scanning
simply,
the Q code.
he's saying not that it's going to impact the scan. He's saying that not that the fold's going to have a problem with counting the vote. The fold will indicate that it must be fake because every mail-in ballot was folded. Therefore, if I find a ballot with no evidence of a fold, somebody's implanted that into the mix.
I see.
I'm going to play a bit more here.
That's the only flat one that's supposed to be in there. The problem is that's not the truth. So here's the cause and effect of it. We're supposed to have the envelopes. They need the envelope to check against the signature. That's how that works. Why do we not have envelopes? Well, we don't have the second part of the envelope is because, well, there were never any envelopes. And that's where we found the legal teams are trying to talk too technical, too geeky. They're relying on the Big Bang Theory to give you the algorithm, and judges and lawyers don't understand it, and they're simply asking for the wrong evidence.
So what should they be asking for, and what can our visitors to everylegalvote.com do to demand that we get this information? You said we own the information. It belongs to the American people. You said that this is a scientific, proper process to evaluate that information. This is something that's used in courts all the time to determine whether there's counterfeits or frauds or whatever. So the court should accept this as good data, whatever you produce. And
Absolutely.
we haven't gotten that because the lawyers haven't asked for it yet. What should they be asking for?
It's not an issue of looking for hanging chads or bad data or machine data or coding to a German server. It's the simplicity of we, the American people, own those physical ballots by law. We, the American people, own those scanned copies. They are scanned in at a high level, so you know it's a very big file. We only need access to audit, not audit on tech terms, but audit on very simple visual terms. Now, they'll tell you they're exposing person's personal information. Well, technically, it's not there. It's already been de-identified. And in my system, we can audit millions of these in a day automatically. So here's what it is. You want the right to see the physical ballot and the digital ballot natively off the machine in a native format, not file encrypted. Attorneys will ask for files, but they get them in an encrypted state that only belong to Dominion or others, and they don't get the key. Then they have to hack them. Well, if you have to hack the files, then you kind of kick the evidence out because they'll say you manipulated. No,
Right.
Native physical scans of the files and physical ballots of the files. And then our systems can high-speed look at them, and we look for that feature called the kinematic hold. But is that it? No. We look to see, is the ballot real to begin with? Does it have all of the upper level encoding? That means the standards.
I'm going to paraphrase where he's going with this. So he's going to say they can examine the QR code and they can find out what printer it's from. They can find out that it's an authentic QR code. And he had said before this that there's multiple touch points in the process where it's not just going from your pen and paper, filling in the ballot, your signature, straight to count. It's going through a lot of touch points through the post office, through people verifying signatures, and so on. So that's where he's implying that there's an opportunity at multiple points for someone to swap that out for a phony ballot. I have a lot of thoughts on this. What's your take?
Fishing expedition.
It's ironic.
Well, first of all, he starts with, there's a little bait and switch there, right? He starts with like, we're not looking at they're looking for the wrong evidence fraud around the ballot. We're only looking to see physically is the piece of paper what is scanned in. So in other words, that somehow that you're filling out a piece of paper that's been folded, and that there's an appearance that it's scanned into the machine, but actually when you pull the image file, you won't see the the telltale signs of the creasing that are present on the physical ballot, and that will be proof that there's not a one-to-one match, paper to whatever, right?
Mhm.
But then he starts talking about, well, upper level security of the queue. So he's changed in midstream what we're looking at, right? I mean, I understand what he's trying to get at. I think again, you could do a paper recount, but without evidence, that's the beauty of this. You could do a paper recount of a paper hand recount of each ballot, uh, instead of relying on the machine count. Is basically what he's asking for. He's asking for every state to be recounted, but keep in mind, among other things, that the places Joe Biden won by 7 million votes or whatever it was, right? But he largely did that because he won by 5 million votes in California and however many million votes in New York, right? The only margins that matter are in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, and Arizona, where recounts were, well, Michigan wasn't conducted because it was over 100,000, but difference. But in Pennsylvania and in Georgia and in Arizona, recounts were conducted, because the margins were narrow. So this is just, I mean, relatively speaking, this is just, to me, this is, again, somebody looking for attention and coming up with a theory that, sounds plausible on its face, but again, would be extremely difficult to actually manipulate. Basically, the voting machine would have to be preloaded with fake images, or somebody sitting around filling out on election day fake ballot, to replace the real ballots and scanning in the fake
Yeah.
ballots, and then of course the paper ballots. I don't even know how he'd go about this, because that only makes sense if you then trash or destroy the real mail-in ballots that came
There
in.
would be a lot of evidence to the that would show that
Yes,
there's all
yeah,
these
yeah.
ballots that were quote, spoiled. And where I see this is very much, that was one of my thoughts was, okay, so how are you able to create a like for like ballot on ballots that you haven't even gotten yet? So let's say somebody's in the sorting office and you see a ballot for Donald Trump and you want to change that. Now that's forgetting the fact that ballots, you can go in just about every state online and check your ballot anyway after it's been counted. But putting that aside, you then need to very quickly create an authentic ballot with the signature, with the name and address already on there. So you have to somehow create a ballot that matches the one that you're swapping out for his
Right.
system to pick that up. Now, for me, there was a whole lot of irony here and a bit of self promoting going on, because the irony of this is he's saying the Dominion system, and there's a lot of mistakes here. We can't check the Dominion system. We don't trust these digital systems. I have a digital system that'll fix this, and it's to me
That's true.
it's thick with irony. And he wants to check all of the actual ballots are correct. Now these ballots you can check, and that's what Georgia are doing. They're auditing these ballots. They're checking the paper ballots to make sure that the record they have in the Dominion system is correct, because the Dominion system just counts. It scans and it counts. You still hold on to that paper copy. And Georgia has done a full audit. So there's a lot of issues that it's almost like we're trying. It is like a witch hunt. And Veg, who's a regular commenter, said they can't brackets shouldn't be verifying signatures. I'm curious to hear what you say, because Veg said this. I think it was last week. They shouldn't be verifying signatures if they're not credentialed to do that. They're having everyday people verify signatures. And before I get you to answer, just one other point I wanted to raise on that. In some of those, because I actually found a link to the 234 affidavits that they used in the Michigan lawsuit. There was a number of people saying that they weren't verifying the signatures, or he mentioned that there's no envelope to verify the signatures. That's because that's done before the ballots get sent to the polling place to be counted. There's people that are verifying those signatures that are trained employees of the government who are verifying those signatures, unless I'm wrong about that. Now, Veg, you weren't here. Andrew actually has worked the polls, has run for office in Pennsylvania. What is your take on that? That we just have volunteers that are being asked to verify signatures?
Well, they're not volunteer. I mean, people are paid for their time. I won't say that. I mean, how many? I mean, listen, is Veg suggesting that you need a handwriting expert to compare signatures? 180 million people voted. If we want to find out 5 years from now who won the election, we can get all the handwriting experts in America to compare, right? So yes, you're going to be relying on people whose expertise are not going to be credentialed handwriting experts to verify signatures, and it's going to be a quick visual inspection against the signature you have on file against the envelope. And again, you're right, Sean. The envelopes are separated. Once the signature is verified, then the ballot is separated from the envelope, and that's the end of that process. So the person then verifies the ballot against the machine count won't have access to the signature because that will have been done,
Yeah.
before the ballot has been opened. Also, I
But-
do full disclosure, where I am at the live voting place. I am not in the mail-in. I'm not up at the county doing the mail-ins. So, although we do get always a certain number of, what do you call it? Well, absentee votes mailed in to the polling place at the, they're part of the count that you're doing live because they're absentee ballots that are done right there. And those signatures are verified by the election day workers, some
Yeah.
of whom are volunteers. I will say that at the individual polling places. Up at the county where they're doing a mass opening, those people are paid.
Yeah, she has a follow-up comment, and I think this is a really good follow-up to that. But I made this point last week when you weren't on. We already verify signatures in banks and supermarkets with people that aren't, I guess, handwriting experts, and I don't think there's an expectation Veg would have that everybody's a handwriting expert. And even to that degree, I think historically, and this was the point that I made before, even before we were verifying signatures on voter ID, there was very low instances of voter fraud when we were just having people rock up and push a button and head on home. So Veg actually made the point. She's in New York.
But there was always a signature because that's what you do, right? Like, so
Okay.
before
I don't remember. I haven't
version,
voted in the States in 15 years. I've always done absentee since I've moved.
before this system, I mean, and even now today, if you go to vote live and in person, the voting person, so let's say I'm a poll worker at the polling location, I've got a book that's arranged alphabetically with all the registered voters in my precinct. And again, remember, I'm describing what happens in Bucks County in Pennsylvania. Every municipality or every county in every state might have a slightly different process. But what I'm also describing happened in Philadelphia County when I was living in Philadelphia. They have a book that has an alphabetical listing of all registered voters, and they have your signature on file from the first time you voted, because you sign it twice the first time you vote. And when you come the first time in Pennsylvania, you do have to show ID your first time. So then they compare it to your driver's license signature when you're first doing it. Thereafter, you just sign the book, and they are looking at your signature in the book, which is printed in the book, versus what you sign live and in front of them. If that
So
makes sense.
okay, so yeah, that makes
There
sense.
is, in other words, there is, and they are volunteers. They're watching you come in, and you have to keep in mind these polling locations often. I mean, my polling location, for example, serves as a neighborhood where, big turnout year. I think we had about 1,500 people vote, and you vote every year. A lot of people are regulars. They know each other. This is a little neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
So, there aren't, I'm not saying that everybody knows everybody else. That's not the case. But,
I would say though
the
that she is
idea
just
that
to
you would
jump.
be able, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just to jump in. I think she's more referring to the mail-in ballots anyway. And one of the
okay.
follow-up points she makes, which I think is I don't always agree with Veg on a lot of the hoops you have to jump through to prove. So my view is all of these claims that there's rampant fraud are a bit boy crying wolf to a degree. And I'm not a big fan of, we should invest a lot of time and money in making a system that's been working for years better, because there's no data to say there is an issue or has been an issue. That being said, she said, you don't have to wait a million years. And she's referencing your comment on, going back in time and then checking all the signatures again. But AI could do a better job. And I think there's something to be said for that. I think we have technology now that scans my face to a high degree and knows my face better than my fingerprint. And I think there is some scope to have, let's say, a visual verification, and then it's when it goes through, it cross references. I think there is a argument to be made in the future that you could use AI to cross check a signature better than a human could. I think that's a fair point to make.
I mean, in the future, and maybe even now, although I will say no two signatures. I mean, if you compare signatures, your face stays your face. Obviously, there are changes over a long enough stretch of time, but the position, what your computer's doing is not looking at wrinkles and whether you have a beard or not. It's looking at the position of your ears relative to your eyes, relative to your nose. These are mathematical proportions that don't change. Signatures,
because if I use my phone, the AI on my phone, if I shaved my beard, it would still recognize me. If I wore glasses, it would still recognize me. And actually, Veg is clarifying here because maybe we didn't quite understand. I'm not suggesting people jump through hoops. I'm suggesting people are in no position to claim there was not fraud if they know not fraud if they know that for practical reasons. They aren't doing what is necessary to secure the integrity of the process. So she's asserting that we can't claim there is no fraud because there's a bunch of people that are verifying that those signatures are authentic, and they really can't. I think that's what she's saying.
I mean, the answer to Veg here. I mean, I say like we don't have the evidence to secure the integrity of the process. I mean, listen, yes, Sean and I on this radio or podcast or what do you call this vodcast?
Call it a podcast. I don't even know what we're calling it.
Right, but do we have what's in front of us? No, but don't think. I mean, we're around, right? President Trump, his legal team, people in various states have spent millions of dollars trying to find evidence, and they can't do it. Now, of course, this guy's point is, well, they're asking for the wrong thing. But again, his claim sounds plausible on its face, but the more you start to ask questions about what's that?
It's a her, I believe.
No, I'm talking about the. I'm talking about the guy with the video where his idea is that the lawyers are asking for the wrong evidence, and that sounds plausible on its face until you start to think about it with any kind of level of scrutiny, like we were starting to do. It makes a nice little pitch on a show that he's doing.
This is the final thing I wanted to mention.
That also benefits the sale of his product.
So he's got a product that he's pitching, and he's talking about data protection as well. So to me, it sounds like he's tried to pitch this product. There was a roadblock because of GDPR. I don't know if that's a term they use in America, but data protection. So there's protection to your vote and your privacy with that vote. He's probably gone in to pitch, let me scan all of these forms with all of this public form data on it. And he's not getting the point. Yes, it's public data, but to the individual, not to the guy who invented QCAT, who's created a scanning machine to check stuff that's irrelevant to what he wants to find out. The ballots are and for me, just where I keep getting unstuck, and this was shit that I got last week, and this video hasn't changed my mind, is I can't conceive of a single process that you can pull off to turn over in multiple states. Let's say 1 million, let's say 750,000 votes by changing ballots that already have the name and address of somebody on it who, you can't predict what people are going to vote at the polling station, and then quickly typing up the ballot to match it and then slipping it in. I just don't.